The warning alarms had been screaming for 3 days now. Commander Lyra Venn stood in what remained of the orbital defense station, watching her world die below. Veron Prime had been beautiful once, with its crystal cities and floating gardens. Now, smoke rose from a dozen burning population centers, dark clouds spreading across continents like a disease. The Kresh were methodical in their destruction. They always were. Lyra had studied the reports from other worlds that had fallen to them. The pattern never changed. First they destroyed all orbital defenses. Then they landed their harvester ships and began collecting everything of value. Resources, technology, and worst of all, people. Entire populations simply vanished into those massive bioships, never to be seen again. Lyra's hands shook as she activated the distress beacon one more time. The message was simple, transmitted in every known language across every frequency. The Kresh fleet has broken through our defenses. 30 million civilians remain on Veron Prime. Please, anyone who can hear this, we need help. We are dying. She had sent this same message 247 times over the past 72 hours. The responses had stopped coming after the first day. The Coalition of Free Worlds sent their regrets. The Galactic Assembly expressed deep concern, but explained they had protocols to follow. The Merchant League said Veron Prime was outside their jurisdiction. The Thalas Empire said they would consider sending aid, but their fleet was committed elsewhere. Everyone had an excuse. Everyone had a reason why they could not help. Lyra understood the truth behind all those careful diplomatic words. They were afraid. The Kresh were too dangerous. Better to let one world fall than risk their own ships and people trying to save it. The deck shuddered beneath her feet as another explosion rocked the station. The Kresh were in no hurry. They knew no help was coming. They could take their time picking apart the defenses, harvesting the planet piece by piece. Lyra's second officer, a young male named Torin, looked up from his console with fear in his crystalline eyes. "Commander, the last defense satellite just went offline. We have nothing left in orbit. The Kresh landing ships are beginning their final descent toward the capital city." Lyra closed her eyes. Her family was in that city. Her mother, her sister's children. She opened her eyes and straightened her uniform. "Continue broadcasting the distress signal. Even if no one comes, at least there will be a record. The galaxy will know what happened here." "Yes, Commander." Torin's voice was barely a whisper. The sensor board suddenly lit up with new contacts. Lyra rushed to the display, her heart's pounding. 6 massive shapes had just appeared at the edge of the system, moving fast. Very fast. The computer struggled to calculate their speed and kept revising the numbers upward. "What are those?" Torin asked. "Did the Coalition send ships after all?" Lyra studied the sensor data, her training taking over despite her fear. "No, those are not Coalition vessels. I have never seen energy signatures like this. The power output is enormous. Each one of those ships is generating more energy than our entire planetary defense grid." "Could they be more Kresh?" "No. The Kresh use bioorganic ships. These are clearly constructed vessels. Metal hulls, fusion drives, and something else. The computer cannot identify their weapons systems." One of the approaching ships transmitted an identification signal. Lyra's translator struggled with it for a moment before displaying the text. "TFS Vengeance, Terran Federation Ship, Humanity." Lyra felt something she had not felt in days. Hope. She had heard of the humans, of course. Everyone had. They were the newcomers, the strange species that had appeared on the galactic stage only 40 years ago. They were primitive by most standards, their technology crude compared to the elder races. But they had one quality that had earned them respect and fear in equal measure. They were completely, utterly fearless. The humans had fought 3 wars in 40 years. They had gone to war with the Corvan Empire over a mining dispute and won. They had fought the Zelthari swarm to a standstill when the swarm tried to colonize a human colony world. They had even stood up to the Tholis Empire, when Tholis ships tried to claim human vessels in neutral space. Every time, the humans had refused to back down. Every time, they had fought with a ferocity that shocked the galaxy. And now they were here. "Open a channel to the lead ship," Lyra ordered. "All frequencies." The response came within seconds. A human face appeared on the screen, a male with short dark hair and hard eyes. He wore a dark blue uniform with rank insignia Lyra did not recognize. When he spoke, the translator rendered his words clearly. "This is Captain Jake Morris of the Terran Federation ship Vengeance. We received your distress call, Commander Ven. We are entering the system now with a full Dreadnought battle group. 6 capital ships, full combat loadout. We see the Kresh fleet in orbit around your world. Please transmit all tactical data you have on enemy positions and strength." Lyra could barely speak. Everyone else said they could not help. But you came. The human captain's expression did not change. "You called for help. We heard you. That is all that matters. Now, we need that tactical data. We have work to do." Torin was already compiling the information, his hands moving quickly across his console. Kresh fleet strength is 64 vessels. 37 remain in high orbit. 27 have descended to lower atmosphere for landing operations. Their flagship is a Decimator-class bioship, 3 times the mass of their standard cruisers. Captain Morris studied something off-screen, probably his own tactical display. 64 ships. That is more than we expected, but we can handle it. Commander Ven, we are going to clear the orbitals. Once we have space superiority, we will send down transports to evacuate your people. How many civilians need immediate extraction? At least 5 million in the capital city alone, Lyra replied. The Kresh have not begun harvesting operations there yet, but they will start soon. Our people are defenseless. Understood. We will not let that happen. The captain looked directly at her through the screen. Commander, I need you to hold that station for another 3 hours. Can you do that? Lyra looked around at her small crew, Torin and 4 others, all exhausted, all terrified, all that remained of a defense force that had once numbered thousands. The station was falling apart, held together by emergency patches and desperate hope. But she met the human captain's eyes and nodded. Yes, we can hold. Good. Vengeance out. The screen went dark. Lyra turned to her crew. You heard the man. We hold for 3 hours. Divert all remaining power to structural integrity. Shut down everything non-essential. We just need to survive a little longer. Through the viewport, she could see the 6 human dreadnoughts accelerating toward Veron Prime, their drives burning like small stars against the black. The Kresh fleet had noticed them now, and was beginning to reorient. 64 ships against 6. Any sane species would run. But Lyra was beginning to understand that humans were not quite sane. At least not by galactic standards. They were something else. Something dangerous and beautiful and terrifying all at once. They were hope given form and armed with weapons of war. And they had come to save her world. Captain Jake Morris watched the tactical display as his fleet closed the distance to Veron Prime. The 6 human dreadnoughts moved in perfect formation, a formation drilled into them through countless exercises and 3 real wars. Each ship knew its place, knew its role, knew exactly what needed to happen next. The bridge of the Vengeance was quiet, except for the steady beep of sensors and the low hum of the ship's massive fusion reactors. Jake's crew worked with practiced efficiency, each officer focused on their station. No panic, no fear, just professionals doing their jobs. That was the human way. That was how Earth's military had been built, forged in the fires of humanity's own violent history. Kresh fleet is reacting to our presence, reported Lieutenant Greg Hayes from the tactical station. They are pulling ships out of lower orbit and forming a defensive screen around their flagship. Count is now 52 vessels in high orbit, 12 still conducting surface operations. Energy signatures? Jake asked. Their weapons are charging. Bioplasma projectors, if our intelligence is correct. Effective range approximately 100,000 kilometers. They also have organic missile pods, basically living creatures engineered to home in on targets and detonate. Jake nodded. The intelligence division had done good work compiling data on the Kresh over the years. Every species that had encountered them contributed information, though few had actually fought them and survived. The Kresh were raiders, not soldiers. They preferred easy targets, weak opponents. They had never faced a peer opponent before. They had definitely never faced humans. Weapon status, Jake ordered. Lieutenant Amy Price looked up from her console. All Nova cannons charged and ready. Railgun batteries loaded. Missile tubes hot. Point defense grid active. We are ready to engage, Captain. Distance to maximum effective range? 90 seconds at current speed. Jake keyed the fleet channel. All ships, this is Vengeance Actual. We engage in 90 seconds. Target priority is the flagship. Retribution and Defiance will focus fire on the Decimator. Vengeance and Iron Will suppress the escort screen. Stormbreaker and Hammer of Soul, you have the reserve. Be ready to exploit any breakthrough. Rules of engagement are weapons free. No Kresh ship leaves this system. Acknowledge. 5 confirmations came back instantly. Admiral Kate Hawkins aboard the Retribution added her own comment. Good hunting, Jake. Let us show these raiders what happens when they pick the wrong target. The seconds counted down. The Kresh fleet began moving to intercept, their bioships pulsing with sickly green light as bioplasma weapons charged. They were organizing into a swarm formation, probably planning to surround and overwhelm the human ships through sheer numbers. It was a tactic that had worked for them countless times before. It would not work today. Range, Greg announced. Firing solutions locked. All ships, Jake said calmly, fire. The Vengeance shuddered as her main guns spoke. 6 Nova cannons, humanity's answer to energy weapons, discharged simultaneously. Magnetic coils accelerated superheated plasma to a fraction of light speed, sending lances of white-hot death across the void. The railgun batteries added their own contribution, thousands of tungsten penetrators creating a wall of metal moving at impossible speeds. The effect was immediate and devastating. 3 Kresh cruisers simply ceased to exist, vaporized by direct hits from Nova cannons. 2 more tumbled away, trailing atmosphere and biomatter, their organic hulls shredded by railgun fire. The Kresh flagship took multiple hits, but its massive bulk absorbed the damage, though deep craters now marked its surface. The other 5 human dreadnoughts fired a heartbeat later. The space around Veron Prime lit up like a star going nova. More Kresh ships died, their bioorganic construction proving inadequate against human weapons designed for a different kind of warfare. Enemy return fire incoming, Greg reported, his voice tight. Evasive pattern Delta. Point defense, engage. The Vengeance's helm officer, Lieutenant Carlos Webb, sent the massive ship into a controlled drift, using maneuvering thrusters to shift their position just enough. Bioplasma bolts streaked past, missing by hundreds of meters. The organic missiles were harder to avoid, but that was what point defense was for. Thousands of small railguns tracked and destroyed the living projectiles before they could reach the fleet. One missile got through, slamming into the Defiance's forward shields. The energy barrier flared bright blue, absorbing the impact. The Defiance did not even slow down. Shields at 87%, Amy reported. Defiance reports minor drain, shields regenerating, no damage. Jake allowed himself a small smile. Human shields were not as advanced as some species, but they were robust and regenerated quickly. The Kresh weapons, designed to overwhelm organic defenses, were less effective against human energy barriers. Continue firing. close to 70,000 kilometers, and prepare for missile launch. The Vengeance led the fleet deeper into the Kresh formation. More enemy ships died under the relentless barrage of Nova cannons and railguns. The Kresh were trying to swarm now, moving in from all sides. But the human ships moved together, their overlapping fields of fire, creating a zone of death that nothing could penetrate. The Retribution and Defiance focused their fire on the Kresh flagship. The massive Decimator-class ship was tough, its layered bioarmor absorbing incredible punishment. But it could not withstand the concentrated fire of 2 human dreadnoughts. Armor boiled away, internal structures collapsed, and finally the great ship began to list as its organic systems failed. "Their flagship is breaking apart," Greg announced. "Internal explosions detected. Wait, they are launching escape pods, hundreds of them." Jake's expression hardened. "Ignore the pods. Focus on combat-capable ships. We can recover survivors after the battle is over." If there were any survivors to recover. The Kresh had a reputation for fighting to the death. But Jake was not going to give them the chance to regroup or make a last stand. This was not a battle. This was an execution. "Missile range," Amy called out. "All tubes ready. Full spread. Target the ships attempting to flee." A dozen Kresh vessels had broken formation and were trying to escape to the outer system, probably hoping to reach jump distance and flee. The human fleet fired as one, hundreds of missiles streaking across space on pillars of flame. Each missile was equipped with its own guidance system and enough explosive power to crack a small moon. The fleeing Kresh ships never had a chance. Missiles caught them one by one, nuclear detonations creating brief new stars against the black. Within 30 seconds, all 12 ships were gone. "Enemy fleet cohesion collapsing," Greg reported. "They are breaking formation. Some ships are trying to reach the planet's atmosphere. Others are scattering." "Do not let them reach the surface," Jake ordered. "Stormbreaker, Hammer of Saul, pursue the ones heading planetward. The rest of us will clean up the orbital zone." The battle became a hunt. The Kresh ships were fast, but human dreadnoughts were faster. One by one, the enemy vessels were tracked down and destroyed. Some tried to fight back, others tried to run. None succeeded. The human ships worked with cold efficiency, their crews executing their duties with practiced precision. 30 minutes after the first shot was fired, the last Kresh combat ship exploded under fire from the Iron Will. The space around Veron Prime was filled with debris and the frozen corpses of bioships, but no living Kresh vessels remained. "Orbital space secured," Greg reported. "All enemy combatants destroyed. We are detecting Kresh ground forces on the planet's surface, but their fleet is gone." Jake nodded. "Signal Admiral Hawkins. Begin recovery operations for any survivors in the escape pods. Have medical teams ready. Then prepare landing operations. We have civilians to evacuate." Amy looked up from her console. "Captain, we are receiving a transmission from Commander Ven on the defense station. She is asking if we really just destroyed the entire Kresh fleet in under an hour." "Tell her yes," Jake replied. "Tell her that was the easy part. Now we have to clean up the ground forces and get her people to safety. That is going to take actual work." He stood from his command chair and stretched. Around him, his crew was already shifting focus to the next phase of operations. The battle was over, but the mission was just beginning. 30 million civilians needed protection and evacuation. Kresh ground forces needed to be eliminated. A world needed to be saved. Just another day for the Terran Federation Navy. Just another distress call answered. Admiral Kate Hawkins stood in the war room of the TFS Retribution, studying the holographic display of Veron Prime. The planet rotated slowly before her, covered in red markers indicating Kresh ground positions. There were hundreds of them scattered across 3 continents, concentrated around population centers where the aliens had been preparing to begin their harvesting operations. The fleet had won in orbit, but the war was not over. 15,000 Kresh ground troops remained on the surface, dug into defensive positions with heavy weapons and bioarmor support. They knew their fleet was destroyed. They knew they were stranded. But the Kresh did not surrender. They never had, in all the centuries they had terrorized the frontier worlds. "Status of our ground forces?" Kate asked. Commander Ryan Cole, her tactical officer, pulled up another display. "We have 12,000 Marines ready for deployment across all 6 ships. That gives us rough numerical parity, but our intelligence suggests the Kresh ground troops are heavily armed. They have been looting military stockpiles from the Vareni defense forces." "What about air support?" "We have 40 dropships configured for ground attack, plus another 60 configured for troop transport and evacuation. The Vareni have some atmospheric fighters still operational, but they are low on ammunition and fuel." Kate nodded, thinking through the problem. A straight assault would work, but it would be costly. Marines would die, and probably a lot of Vareni civilians caught in the crossfire. There had to be a better way. "What if we do not give them time to prepare?" she said. "The Kresh are expecting us to organize, plan, maybe negotiate. What if we just hit them everywhere at once, right now?" Ryan considered this. A simultaneous assault on all positions? That would spread our forces thin. If any single position holds out, it could become a rallying point. But the Kresh have no command structure anymore. We destroyed their flagship. Their ground commanders are probably still trying to figure out what happened to their fleet. If we hit them hard and fast, before they can organize, we might break them before they can mount a coherent defense. It is risky. Everything is risky, Kate replied. But those people down there have been living in terror for 3 days. Every hour we wait is another hour the Kresh have to hurt them. I say we go now. Ryan smiled slightly. When you are right, you are right. I will begin coordinating the assault. All ships commit their full marine complement. Everything we have. I want dropships in the air in 20 minutes. Transmit targets to all company commanders. Make sure they understand. This is a speed operation. Get in, eliminate the Kresh, secure the civilians, get out. No heroes, no unnecessary risks. Yes, ma'am. 23 minutes later, the first wave of dropships hit atmosphere. The assault was coordinated across the entire planet, human marines descending on every known Kresh position simultaneously. The aliens had no time to react, no time to coordinate. They were still fighting as individual units, when the humans crashed into them like a wave of steel and fury. Captain Nina Brooks pulled her dropship into a steep dive toward the capital city of Veron Prime. Below her, she could see the crystalline towers that the Vareni had built, beautiful structures that caught and reflected light in rainbow patterns. Smoke rose from several of the towers where Kresh weapons had damaged them, but most of the city was still intact. 30 seconds to landing zone, her co-pilot Sam Porter called out. Kresh anti-air is active. I have target lock warnings. Evasive pattern. All gunships. Suppress those positions. The dropship jinked left, then right, as bioplasma bolts streaked past. Behind Nina's transport, 4 gunships broke formation and dove toward the Kresh anti-air positions. Their nose cannons blazed, 30mm rounds tearing into the alien weapons and the soldiers operating them. The anti-air fire stopped. Landing zone clear. 10 seconds. Nina brought the dropship down in the middle of a plaza, surrounded by refugee shelters. Thousands of Vareni civilians were huddled there, protected by a thin line of their own soldiers, armed with whatever weapons they had managed to salvage. As the dropship's ramp lowered, Nina could see the hope in their crystalline faces. Staff Sergeant Kyle Bennett was first off the ramp, his powered armor making him look like a walking tank. Behind him came 30 more Marines, all in full combat gear, weapons ready. Kyle did a quick sweep of the area, his armor sensors painting targets and threat assessments. Perimeter secure, he reported. Vareni commander, where are the Kresh positions? A Vareni officer stepped forward, her uniform torn and stained. 3 blocks north, they have taken over a government complex and are using it as a base. At least 200 soldiers, maybe more. They have heavy weapons. Good to know. Marines, on me. We are going to clear that complex and secure this area. Second squad, you stay here and protect these civilians. Everyone else, let us move. Kyle led his squad north through the ruined streets. The city was eerily quiet, except for the distant sounds of battle from other parts of the planet. They moved quickly, using their armor's strength to leap over obstacles and crashed vehicles. The Kresh complex came into view, a large building surrounded by hastily constructed barricades. "Contact front," called one of the Marines. "Multiple targets, range 200 meters. Kyle brought up his rifle and targeted the nearest Kresh soldier. The alien was a nightmare made flesh, all chitinous plates and clicking mandibles, carrying a bioweapon that pulsed with green light. Kyle fired a 3-round burst. The Kresh soldier went down. Then all hell broke loose. The Kresh opened fire from multiple positions, bioplasma and organic projectiles filling the air. Kyle's squad took cover and returned fire, their weapons designed to punch through armor and destroy targets quickly. The Kresh had numbers and position. The humans had training and technology. "Flank them," Kyle ordered. "Third fire team, go left. Fourth, go right. First and second, suppress the center. Move." The Marines executed the maneuver perfectly. While half the squad kept the Kresh pinned down with sustained fire, the other half moved to flanking positions. The aliens tried to adjust, but they were too slow. Marines appeared on their sides and rear, firing controlled bursts that dropped Kresh soldiers with brutal efficiency. "Grenade out!" one Marine called. The explosive arced through the air and landed in the middle of a Kresh position. The detonation sent alien bodies flying. The survivors tried to retreat into the building, but more Marines had circled around to block the exits. Within 10 minutes, the battle was over. Every Kresh soldier was dead. Kyle checked his tactical display. Green icons were appearing all over the map as Marine units reported successful assaults. The Kresh were being overwhelmed, their positions falling one after another. A few were putting up determined resistance, but it did not matter. The humans just kept coming, squad after squad, platoon after platoon. "Status check," Kyle called to his squad. "Anyone hit?" "Parker took a glancing shot to her left arm," reported one Marine. "Armor held. She is fine." "Good. Let's regroup and move. Secure this position and call for an evac transport. Let us get these civilians out of here." All across Veron Prime, the same scene played out. Human Marines hit Kresh positions with overwhelming force. Some battles lasted minutes, others took hours, but the outcome was never in doubt. By the time the sun set on the capital city, not a single Kresh soldier remained alive on the planet. The cost had been surprisingly light. 43 Marines killed in action, another 112 wounded. The Vareni had lost thousands during the 3-day siege, but the human intervention had prevented the complete annihilation of their species. Kate received the final reports in the Retribution's war room. Every Kresh position eliminated. All major population centers secured. Evacuation of wounded and vulnerable civilians already underway. Medical teams were treating Vareni casualties, while engineers were helping restore power and water to damaged areas. "Total Kresh ground forces eliminated," Ryan reported. "We took minimal casualties. The Marines performed exceptionally." Kate nodded, but there was no satisfaction in her expression. "Minimal is still too many. 43 good people who will not be going home. 43 families who will get a flag and a medal and an empty chair at dinner." "They died protecting innocents," Ryan said quietly. "That is what they signed up for." "I know. It does not make it easier." Kate looked at the planet rotating on the display. "But we saved 30 million people today. That has to count for something." "It counts for everything, ma'am." Kate allowed herself a small smile. "Get me a channel to Commander Ven. I want to coordinate the long-term stabilization effort. Let them know Veron Prime is secure, and request additional support ships for reconstruction. Yes, ma'am. As Ryan left to carry out her orders, Kate stood alone in the war room, looking at the planet they had saved. This was what the Terran Federation did. This was what humanity brought to the galaxy. Not conquest, not domination, but protection. The strong defending the weak. The capable helping the helpless. It was a role humanity had chosen for itself, and Kate was proud to be part of it. The medical bay of the TFS Vengeance was organized chaos. Dozens of Vereni civilians lay on medical beds, while Navy corpsmen moved between them, treating injuries ranging from minor cuts to severe plasma burns. The ship's chief medical officer, Dr. Lisa Grant, supervised everything with the calm efficiency of someone who had worked in combat hospitals for 20 years. She stopped beside a young Vereni female, no more than adolescent by their species standards. The girl's arm was badly burned, her crystalline skin cracked and weeping a clear fluid. Dr. Grant gently examined the wound, while a translator device on her collar rendered her words into the Vereni language. This is going to hurt a little, but we need to clean the wound before we can treat it properly. Can you be brave for me? The girl nodded, fear in her large eyes. Dr. Grant worked quickly, cleaning the burn and applying a regenerative gel that human medicine had developed for treating severe injuries. The girl whimpered, but did not cry out. When it was done, Dr. Grant wrapped the arm in clean bandages and gave the girl a small smile. You did great. This medicine will help your skin heal. In a few days, you will be as good as new. The girl's mother, who had been standing nearby with tears streaming down her face, bowed deeply. Thank you. Thank you for saving my daughter. Thank you for saving all of us. Dr. Grant felt a lump in her throat, but maintained her professional composure. That is what we do. Now, let me check you over. I see some cuts on your face that need attention. All across the fleet, similar scenes played out. 6 dreadnoughts had become temporary refugee centers, housing thousands of Vereni who had lost their homes or needed medical care. The human crews had given up their own quarters, sleeping in shifts in common areas, so that civilians could have proper beds. The mess halls ran around the clock, feeding the hungry. Medical bays worked non-stop, treating the injured. Captain Jake Morris walked through the corridors of his ship, seeing his crew working alongside Vereni civilians. A group of engineers was teaching some young Vereni males how to repair damaged equipment. In one recreation room, off-duty Marines were playing simple games with Vereni children, making them laugh for the first time in days. In another area, a Navy chaplain was sitting with a group of Vereni elders, offering comfort, even though they did not share the same religion. This was humanity at its best, Jake thought. Not the warriors who had destroyed the Kresh fleet, but the caregivers who now worked tirelessly to heal the wounded and comfort the traumatized. Both sides of the same coin. The capacity for violence when necessary, and the capacity for compassion when the fighting was done. He found Lieutenant Amy Price in the main cargo bay, which had been converted into a distribution center. Supplies were being organized and prepared for transport down to the planet. Food, medicine, building materials, power generators, water purification systems, everything a recovering world would need. How are we looking? Jake asked. Amy looked up from her datapad. We have enough supplies to support the major population centers for about 2 weeks. After that, we will need resupply from Earth or one of the colony worlds. I have already sent the request through channels. What about the Vereni themselves? What are their needs? Commander Ven sent over a priority list. Medical supplies are number 1. They lost most of their hospitals in the first day of the attack. Food is second. The Kresh destroyed a lot of agricultural areas. Third is power generation. The planet's main reactor was damaged, and is operating at 30% capacity. Jake nodded. We can help with all of that. Tell engineering to send teams down to look at the reactor, see if they can get it running at higher capacity, and double the medical supply distribution. I want every clinic and aid station fully stocked. Yes, sir. There is one other thing. Amy hesitated. The Vereni are asking if we can help them recover their dead. The Kresh killed thousands in the first 3 days. Bodies are still being found in the ruins. Jake felt a cold anger settle in his chest. This was the reality of what the Kresh did. Not just killing soldiers in battle, but murdering civilians who could not fight back. Children, elders, anyone who got in their way. It was genocide, pure and simple. Send down recovery teams with full biological protection. Work with the Vereni authorities to identify collection points. We will help them give their dead proper funeral rites. Understood, sir. Jake left the cargo bay and made his way to the bridge. The tactical display showed the current situation across Veron Prime. Green markers indicated human positions and secured areas. Blue markers showed Vereni population centers. There were no more red markers. Every Kresh position had been eliminated. But the display also showed something else. Yellow markers at the edge of the system. 3 ships, not Kresh, approaching at standard commercial speeds. What are those contacts? Jake asked. Lieutenant Greg Hayes looked up from tactical. They just entered the system, Captain. Transponders identify them as Coalition of Free Worlds vessels. 2 frigates and a hospital ship. They are hailing us. Put them through. A face appeared on the screen. An insectoid species Jake recognized as Thalus. The being mandibles clicked as it spoke, the translator rendering the words in flat, mechanical tones. This is Coalition Captain Gier of the medical vessel Healing Wind. We received word that Veron Prime was under attack, and came as quickly as we could. What is the current situation? Jake had to work to keep the disgust out of his voice. The situation is resolved, Captain Gier. The Kresh fleet has been destroyed, and all ground forces eliminated. We are currently conducting humanitarian operations and assisting with planetary recovery. The Tholus captain's expression was hard to read, but there was definitely surprise there. Destroyed? The entire Kresh fleet? How many ships did you lose? None. All 6 of our Dreadnoughts are fully operational. Silence on the other end of the channel. Jake could imagine what the alien captain was thinking. The Kresh had been a terror of the frontier for decades. They had destroyed civilizations, depopulated worlds, and humanity had just wiped out an entire fleet without losing a single ship. I see, the Tholus captain finally said. We have medical personnel and supplies. May we assist with the recovery effort? Jake wanted to tell them to turn around and go home. They had their chance to help 3 days ago when the distress call first went out. They had chosen to hide behind protocols and regulations while people died. But he swallowed his pride and nodded. Your assistance would be welcome, Captain. Coordinate with Admiral Hawkins on the retribution. She is managing the relief operations. We can use all the help we can get. Thank you, Captain Morris. We will render all assistance possible. The channel closed. Greg looked over at Jake. Think they will actually help, or just take credit for the rescue? As long as the Vereni get the help they need, I do not care who gets the credit. But make a note in the after-action report about response times. Make sure everyone knows who showed up when it mattered. Already done, sir. Over the next few days, more ships arrived. A Merchant League convoy brought food and supplies. A Galactic Assembly fact-finding team came to document the battle and the Kresh atrocities. Even a few independent freighters showed up, their captains offering to help with reconstruction. But it was the human fleet that stayed. While other ships came and went, the 6 Dreadnoughts remained in orbit, their crews working around the clock to help Veron Prime recover. Engineers repaired infrastructure. Medical teams treated the wounded. Marines cleared debris and made buildings safe. Supply officers distributed food and medicine. Commander Lyra Venn stood in the rebuilt command center of the orbital defense station, watching it all happen. The station had been nearly destroyed, but human repair crews had worked miracles. It was not fully operational yet, but it was functional. A human officer stood beside her, Lieutenant Commander Ryan Cole from the Retribution. He had been assigned as a liaison between the human fleet and the Vereni government. Over the past week, Lyra had come to respect the quiet, competent man. "Your people have done so much for us," she said. "We can never repay this debt." Ryan shook his head. "There is no debt. You needed help, we gave it. That is what civilized species do for each other." But others did not help. They made excuses. They were afraid. Fear is understandable. We have all been afraid at some point. What matters is what you do with that fear. Do you let it paralyze you, or do you push through it and do what is right? Lyra looked at the human. "Your species is very young by galactic standards. Yet, you seem to understand things that elder races have forgotten." Ryan smiled. "Maybe it is because we are young. We remember what it was like to struggle, to be vulnerable, to need help and not get it. That is a hard lesson to forget." "I hope you never forget it," Lyra said. "The galaxy needs people like you, people who come when others call for help, people who stand up to monsters." "We will always come," Ryan promised. "That is who we are. That is who we choose to be." And looking out at the 6 dreadnoughts standing watch over her world, Lyra believed him. 3 weeks had passed since the battle. Veron Prime was healing slowly but surely. Power had been restored to 90% of the population centers. Food distribution was back on schedule. The hospitals, rebuilt with human assistance, were treating the last of the wounded. Life was returning to something approaching normal. Captain Jake Morris stood in the Grand Council chamber of Veron Prime, a massive crystalline hall that had somehow survived the Kresh attack intact. The room was filled with representatives from a dozen different species, all of them wanting to understand what had happened here. The news had spread fast across the galaxy. Humanity had destroyed a Kresh fleet and saved an entire world. People wanted to know why, and more importantly, how. Councillor Tharn of the Cetri Confederation was the first to speak. He was an elderly being, his scaled skin marked with age spots, his voice carrying the weight of centuries. "Captain Morris, on behalf of the Galactic Assembly, I must ask the question that everyone is thinking. Your fleet was 3 sectors away when Veron Prime sent their distress call. You had no treaty obligations to the Vereni people. Your government could have declined to help with no political consequences. So why did you come?" Jake had been expecting this question. He had thought about his answer carefully during the long trip back from the battle. But now, standing in this room full of alien dignitaries, he decided to speak from the heart, instead of giving some prepared diplomatic response. 150 years ago, my homeworld nearly destroyed itself, he began. We had wars that killed millions. We had famines that starved entire regions. We had diseases that swept across continents. We poisoned our air and water. We came very close to making Earth uninhabitable. By all rights, humanity should have gone extinct. Every eye was on him. Every translator working to render his words in a dozen different languages. But we survived. Do you know why? Because when things got really bad, people helped each other. Not because they were the same race or religion or nationality. Not because there was profit in it. But because they were human beings, and other human beings needed help. Strangers helped strangers. Communities supported each other. Nations that had been enemies worked together to solve problems bigger than any one group could handle alone. Councillor Tharn shifted in his seat, but that was your own species helping itself. We are talking about helping aliens, beings you have no connection to. Jake smiled. When we finally made it to the stars and met other species, we had a choice. We could see you all as aliens, as others, as beings fundamentally different from us. Or we could see you as people. Living, thinking, feeling beings who love their children and fear death and want to live in peace, just like we do. We chose to see you as people. Another counselor spoke up, a Merchant League representative whose species Jake did not recognize. But the cost, the risk. You could have lost ships, lost lives. The Kresh could have destroyed your fleet. Then we would have sent more ships, Jake replied simply. That is the thing about humanity. When we decide something matters, when we decide someone is worth fighting for, we do not give up. We do not calculate cost versus benefit and decide it is not worth it. We commit and we see it through. Commander Lyra Venn stood from her seat among the Vereni delegation. If I may speak, she said quietly. I was there when the distress call was sent. I watched as species after species declined to help. Some said they were too far away. Others said it was too dangerous. Still others hid behind regulations and protocols. But the humans, who were farther away than most and who had nothing to gain from helping us, came anyway. She looked directly at Jake. You did not come because of treaties or trade agreements. You did not come because you expected payment or favors. You came because we asked for help and you heard us. That is something I will never forget. My people will never forget. Admiral Kate Hawkins, who had been standing quietly at the back of the room, stepped forward. The Terran Federation is prepared to make a formal offer. We are establishing what we are calling the Terran Defense Alliance. Any species that wishes to join will receive assistance in rebuilding and strengthening their defensive capabilities. We will help train your forces, upgrade your technology, and establish joint defense protocols. And if you are attacked again, you will not have to wait and hope that someone might help you. She paused, letting that sink in. No questions, no delays, no debates, because that is what allies do for each other. The room erupted in conversation, dozens of species talking among themselves. Jake watched as the implications spread through the crowd. Humanity was offering something unprecedented in galactic politics. Not a trade deal or a non-aggression pact, but a genuine mutual defense alliance based on shared values rather than shared interests. Over the following days, representatives from species across the frontier worlds came to speak with the human delegation. Some were cautious, worried about the strings that might be attached. Others were eager, already having suffered at the hands of raiders and pirates with no help from the established powers. Kate and Jake met with them all, explaining the terms clearly. No tribute payments, no surrender of sovereignty, no requirement to adopt human laws or customs. Just a simple agreement. If you are attacked, we will help you. And if we are attacked, you will help us if you are able. Alliance based on mutual respect and shared commitment to protecting the innocent. 17 species signed the agreement in the first month. The political ramifications spread quickly through the galaxy. The coalition of free worlds was embarrassed by their failure to respond to Veron Prime's distress call. The Galactic Assembly formed committees to study the incident and recommend changes to their response protocols. The Merchant League quietly began increasing their security fleets. But the real impact was on the frontier worlds themselves. For the first time in living memory, they had hope. The Kresh, who had terrorized them for generations, had been utterly destroyed. The humans had proven that the raiders were not invincible, that they could be beaten if someone had the will to fight them. And humanity had made it clear they had that will. 6 months after the Battle of Veron Prime, the Kresh attempted another raid on a frontier world called Talos IV. The world was home to a peaceful agricultural society with minimal defenses. It should have been an easy target. But Talos IV had joined the Terran Defense Alliance. 3 human destroyers arrived within hours of the distress call. The Kresh fled without engaging. They had learned their lesson. A year later, a reporter from the Galactic News Network came to interview Jake, who had been promoted to Admiral and given command of the Terran Third Fleet. She was a Vereni, and Jake recognized her immediately. It was Lyra Venn, who had left military service to become a journalist. "Admiral Morris, there is a question I have wanted to ask you since that day you arrived at Veron Prime," she said as the cameras rolled. "In all the centuries of galactic history, no species has ever done what humanity did. You came to save people you did not know, at great risk, with nothing to gain. Why is humanity different?" Jake thought about that for a long moment. "I do not think we are different," he finally said. "I think every species has the capacity for compassion, for courage, for putting others before themselves. But sometimes species forget that. They become comfortable, cautious. They build systems and structures designed to minimize risk and maximize profit." He looked directly into the camera. "Humanity has not forgotten what it is like to need help and not get it. We remember our history, the times when we failed each other, and the times when we succeeded. And we decided that when we went to the stars, we would be the people who show up, the people who help, the people you can count on when everything is falling apart." "And if that puts you in danger?" Lyra asked. "Then we accept that danger. Because what is the alternative? To hide behind our borders and let people suffer? To calculate whether helping is profitable before deciding whether lives are worth saving? That is not who we want to be. That is not the legacy we want to leave." The interview was broadcast across the galaxy and became one of the most watched pieces of media in history. It crystallized something that had been growing in the galactic consciousness since the Battle of Veron Prime. Humanity was not just another spacefaring species. They were something new, something the galaxy had not seen before. They were hope. Years passed. The Terran Defense Alliance grew to include 47 species. Frontier worlds that had lived in fear for generations began to prosper as the threat of raiders diminished. The Kresh, their power broken, retreated to the Outer Rim and were never heard from again. Other raider groups saw what happened to the Kresh and decided to find easier targets far from human space. And whenever a distress call went out, whenever someone cried for help into the black void of space, there was one answer that became universal. The humans will come. Not might come, not possibly come, but will come, with their dreadnoughts and their marines and their absolute refusal to abandon people who needed help. They would come with medical supplies and food and engineers. They would come with weapons and shields and the willingness to fight. They would come because that was who they had chosen to be. Captain Jake Morris, now Admiral Jake Morris, stood on the bridge of his flagship and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, someone might be in trouble. Somewhere out there, a distress call might be sent. And when it was, humanity would answer. They would always answer. Because that was what humans did. They showed up.